It's another big week for the Nashville Predators with some milestones on the horizon.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you for making us your first stop of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. I want to start off by shouting out all the Locked On Predators podcast community and our everydayers who tune in to chat all things Preds every day. My name is Jack Williams, and I am the Nashville Predators beat writer for the hockey news, and we got some fun topics for y'all today, starting off with Roman Josi, or as we have it labeled on the show today, Red Hot Roman. Man, he is playing some great hockey lately, just consistent throughout his entire career and really picking up on that offensive edge from the blue line there. He was named the he was named the second star of the week of the NHL's 3 stars of the week. That was 7 points in 3 games from Roman. They kind of do their stars of the week from Monday to Monday. So if they kind of did it from Sunday to Sunday, maybe he could have gone for that first star, as he has 10 points in 4 games. They didn't include that Washington Capitals game where he had 3 points in that. But man's just been on a heater right now. He's been absolutely rolling, just finding ways to get involved, really bringing up this defense, especially when they've needed it this season. And just doing Roman Josi things, honestly. I mean, this man leaves just a massive impact on the ice, on and off, when we're talking about the leadership, talking about his play. And as Andrew Brunette has said this year, and many other players have said this year, that when he's out of the lineup, they don't play well. They don't play well, or at least the way they phrased it is, you can tell when Roman Josi is out of the lineup on this team, as it's just his impact is felt constantly, whether it's there or not. And he's just been looking good lately. I mean, the goals that he's scored lately, or just the way he's been getting involved, and just driving the puck, the shot he has on some of these goals he's had lately have been phenomenal. And he's really picking up at an important time in his career, and not just talking about getting older and playing well, but he's coming up on 2 major milestones right now. That is 1,000 career games as of Monday, January 19th. He is at 998th. Tuesday's game against the Buffalo Sabres will be 999. And Thursday's game against the Ottawa Senators will be 1,000 career games for Roman Josi. For some of y'all, I know that's probably crazy to hear, as some of y'all probably remember when he first came to Nashville. I remember him he's been kind of a big part of my NHL experience and watching growing up too, and him just being a constant presence in the Central Division, and just kind of being one of those model guys of when you think of the Nashville Predators, you think of guys like Pekka Rinne, Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg. He's one of those names. Shea Weber. I mean, he's just one of those names that instantly get incorporated to the identity of this team. And to see him get 1,000 career games, not goals, with the Predators as their team captain is going to be a special moment. So if all goes well, he stays healthy, nothing else happens, knock on wood, all the good luck for this, his 1,000th career game will be against the Ottawa Senators. Now, talking about the other milestone he is getting really close at right now, and talking about the pace he's on too, he could very well pass this milestone up in that Senators game too. He is at 200. He's going to pass soon. We don't know when, but he is nearing 200 career goals. He now has 198. Again, considering the way he's moving right now, it's really not out of the park that he could pass that in that game. He could pass it in tonight's game for y'all against the Sabres. He could score 2 goals, especially when you're on a pace where you're scoring 10 points in 4 games, 7 and 3 in the NHL standards when we're talking about the stars of the week. But coming really close to that, could have a really special night, eclipsing both, could start the celebrations here a little bit early and get that milestone in the Sabres game, or we could hold out later into the week and he could reach that goal scoring margin in the Utah game on Saturday, which should be interesting about what's going to go on with that. There's some real bad snow coming into Nashville later this week. In my Midwest mind of growing up in Chicago and going to school in Indiana, if you hear about weather that weather this early in the week, like a week ahead of time, you know it's going to be really bad. So there's a little bit of anxiety when it comes to the weather that's coming into the Middle Tennessee South region on Saturday. But talk about Roman Josi here, and just it's going to be a big week for him. It's exciting to see, especially in my experience and talking to all different athletes, sports professionals. He's one of the best. He's just well spoken. He's extremely friendly and approachable. I can tell you in some other locker rooms that I've been in, some of the players aren't as approachable. They come off as very intimidating, are hard to talk to. Roman Josi is not that guy at all. He is so easy to talk to, extremely friendly, just a good light to be around, especially when we're watching during practices. The guy always has a smile on his face, always in a good mood, great leader. I mean, today, too, we were watching corner drills at practice today, and he was going up against Jonathan Marchessault, and it was a little bit of a size mismatch, and Roman just being so much bigger than Jonathan is. But, I mean, the smile didn't leave Roman's face the entire time, and he's just out there having a great time constantly and leading. And even in that corner drill matchup, Marchessault and him were joking after, and Marshy said that, everywhere I turned, I just saw your stick, so I didn't know what to do, but he's just a great guy. I mean, I know I've not been on this beat for very long and quickly have learned a lot about this team. And Roman has just been, I think a lot of people could agree to, he's just one of my favorite people to talk to and be around. So it's exciting to see him have this moment. And it's only going to continue here for him this season in February, getting the opportunity to represent Team Switzerland. I asked him a handful of questions about that in a story that will be coming up right as the Olympics come around. That's when everybody disappears. And I'm going to be struggling for content for 2 weeks outside of watching the Olympics. So he talks a little bit about his Olympic story and the Olympic journey with Switzerland too. If you guys don't keep up with international hockey, there are primarily, as we've seen in the Four Nations, there are 4 superpowers in hockey, 5. Typically, Russia's not really involved right now, but we'll count them as the 5th as of now. They are a superpower in hockey. It's the United States, Canada, Sweden, Finland, and Russia. Czechia is probably 6th after that, and then it kind of fizzles off into everyone else. Switzerland in the past few years has really come up into their own and shown that they can compete with these top nations in the world and proven to be a hockey power, whether it's being in that silver medal game constantly in the world championships or maybe making a push in the Olympics, especially in these past few years when the NHL players haven't been there. Switzerland's been right there. And a lot of it goes into these NHL players that are Swiss and have built this up. Roman being the captain and a big part of it. Nico Hischier is another part of one. New Jersey being a Swiss #1 overall pick back in 2017. Trying to think of some names. Niederreiter is another name that's been around the league for so long, an important part of the leadership. Timo Meier, I don't know who he's playing for right now. That's one of the names Roman mentioned. And talk about the story, but just the impact of him in Switzerland has been ginormous. But it's been a good time to be Roman Josi right now for sure. It's going to be exciting to watch this week and just be able to celebrate the impact that he's made on this organization. I know fans have got to be looking forward to it. Would love to hear your favorite Roman Josi stories, Roman Josi moments in the comments or wherever. I mean, like I said, I haven't been around this beat for too long, but he definitely leaves a lasting impact in guys just you want to be around, want to talk to, and just enjoy being around. Great captain, great leadership. I've gushed enough about him. He's just awesome. He's a great guy, and he definitely deserves the celebration that he can hopefully get this week for sure. Again, nothing in hockey is certain. Knock on wood. We're gonna put all good vibes towards it. All good energy. We're manifesting Roman Josi, 1,000 career games, 200 career goals. We're all manifesting this week. But that's all I got for Roman right now. When we come back, I talked to Ryan O'Reilly today, and it's another guy I like being around too and like talking to because he's just really well spoken. He'll chat with you. He's very casual, and talk to him about the weekend because it was a very crazy weekend and talk about what the Predators got out of it, kind of some questions that people had about what ifs and stuff, and what it's going to look like with this week coming up. Ryan O'Reilly on the Preds road trip is coming up right after the break. There is nothing like being near the ice during hockey season. The speed, the hits, the atmosphere, it's a match. Watching at home is great, but being in the building is a completely different experience. The only thing that used to get in the way was actually getting tickets. Long queues, endless screens, and price changing at checkout. That's why the Gametime app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NHL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I pulled up the game app to check out the upcoming NHL games. So, Preds are back in town. They're going to be playing the Sabres on Tuesday, going to be playing the Senators on Thursday, and then they're going to be playing the Mammoth on Saturday. Again, there's big games, big moments for these big games coming up. Roman Josi's 1,000th career game is going to be on Thursday, and then the Preds are on a roll right now. You're going to want to get tickets, especially if the snow is coming in on Saturday. Tickets for that Utah game may be very cheap, cheaper than usual. So Gametime is definitely the way to go with that. Fees are included in the prices. Know your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. That is critical. That's crucial to know. And just making sure that when you click purchase, it's not going up by like $20 or $30. The app is incredibly easy to use. Browsing, comparing, and buying tickets took just minutes. One of my favorite features is seeing the view from my seat before buying, so I know exactly what I'm getting. The zone deals are clutch. You choose the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save even more. Seeing NHL tickets available for as low as $25 makes it easy to plan a game night. Again, they could be cheaper on Saturday because of the weather coming in. So if you're looking for tickets to get and seeing those prices drop, I would go for Gametime completely. I am saying that genuinely. I really like that fees are included up front. That's huge. So the price you see is the price you pay. Knowing tickets are backed by the Gametime guarantee gives real peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. So today, I'm chatting with a few of the Preds players and going out to practice. It's always a time going out to practice and fun. It takes a second to drive over to Centennial, but I enjoy going over there, honestly. It reminds me of the ice rinks of the ones I used to play in when I was younger. And then today they had an MLK tournament going on. And one of the high schools from where I grew up around Chicago. One of the high schools that I remember playing against was playing a game there. So that was kind of fun to watch. Shout out to the Glenbrook North Spartans. They beat I think it was like the South Carolina Junior Stingrays. They beat them in overtime on it with 0.5 seconds left. Phenomenal finish. But before that, I was talking to Ryan O'Reilly and just I was working on something longer that's going to come out before the Olympics. And I was kind of standing there being like, I think I need to do something for today and debrief the week and talk about something currently happening. And the weekend is kind of the big topic right now, especially the Avalanche win that despite the loss to Vegas after it was still a substantial win. So I'm like, and this was after everybody left, and Ryan O'Reilly usually stays really long after. He works with a bunch of guys after practice, and a big flock of players usually come off the ice right as practice is over. But O'Reilly and probably, I think they said 7 or 6 other guys, they will spend probably 10, 15 minutes longer just doing one-on-one work on the ice with each other, which is nice. And O'Reilly leads it, but they always take a second to come off the ice. So I'm like, well, I'm waiting a round. He's always really well-spoken, another guy that's just extremely friendly. Like, let's chat to him about the week. So I want to share with you guys the conversation I had with him. Wanted to talk about the biggest lessons learned from the weekend with him. And he said, we know we can play with any team and beat any team in this league, but we have to stick to our structure and our game plan. Keep that execution, especially when we're tired. And that came into play in the Vegas game, meaning that they played 40 minutes of really good hockey, and then the wheels came off a little bit more. And he said, Predators really lost their details in that game, lost what they were doing well, lost their structure in that third period there, and Vegas took complete advantage of that as they scored 5 straight goals in the third period, 7 unanswered in the game. But again, like I said, the first 40 minutes of the game were played soundly and strong by the Predators. They had a 1-0 lead coming out of the first period, and then the second intermission, Predators, that's where their structure started becoming a little bit more undone. Gave up 2 quick goals at the end of the second, but it was still a 2-1 game in favor of Vegas at the end of the second period. Still a very manageable game. But that was the biggest thing he said, in saying that when we stick to what we're good at, stick to our values and all that, and our structure will play well. He also mentioned too that the Avalanche win was a very emotional one well, I guess it was emotional for Colorado in a different way, but it was emotional for the Preds. And it was draining in that sense. And that going into the second game, I don't think a lot of people put into context or regard how much emotions are spent with something like that happening, and that it can be draining going into the next game and knowing that you gave out so much, especially mentally, in one matchup, and then immediately turning around having to do it again. O'Reilly didn't want to use any excuses in talking about this, but he did mention it was emotionally taxing and kind of did make it hard the second night. Scheduling was a big thing I asked about, and I said, listen, I'm like, no, there's no excuses. I know there's the whole what if of everything, but at the same time, do you think that this game, the Vegas game, would have been a different result if you guys had maybe a day off in between, maybe 2 days off? It wasn't a back-to-back matchup. And the first thing he said was, well, there's no excuse with the schedule. The schedule is what it is. And he said, everybody's having back-to-back games right now. And then used the example of what happened in Edmonton and even said, we've taken advantage of teams having back-to-back games in order to win games, the same way Vegas did. And he, as I said, mentioned the Edmonton game where he said, we were playing the best players in the league and their speed too. So it was nice to get them maybe a little tired. It's just the way it goes. And he's right, meaning that McDavid and Draisaitl might have been a little bit slower. They're coming off of a 4-1 win over the Blackhawks. Next night, turn around in Nashville. They're playing a Nashville team that's giving them all they got, and that ends up in a loss for the Oilers. But it's, again, what the Predators took advantage of, and it's what the Golden Knights took advantage of as well. He did add to the point, if this was a playoff situation, again, the way the playoffs are is there's at least a day break in between games. I think with travel in the first and second rounds, maybe the third round, the final, it's not like this, but in travel days between like games 2 and 3, there's usually like usually a 2-day break in between games in those early rounds, and then the final, it's like 2 or 3 game days. It's a while. So there are longer times to rest, but that's because these games are more taxing. They're longer, and these guys are more beaten up physically and mentally. So there's a lot more of a break in that time. But he did say, if this was a playoff situation that we were playing Vegas, and I don't think you would have seen the way we came undone. That's not the word, but it's a similar way where he said that collapse that happened in the third period where things did get undone. Essentially, he said that wouldn't have happened if we had kind of a playoff break and a playoff structure in that Vegas game there. And that's a real possibility for this team if they push for wild card 1, essentially, because let's be real, I don't think anybody's catching the Avalanche for the top spot in the West. If Vegas ends up getting that top spot in the Pacific Division, Predators work up to a wild card 1 spot, that could be a situation there that we can look back on, reflect on this conversation, said, you know what, O'Reilly was right. If this was a completely different game that happened in the playoffs, as we saw from the regular season matchup. And that would be interesting. But again, it's January 19th, and we're not talking about playoffs right now because we're in the middle of the winter, in the middle of the season. And then talked a little bit more about the schedule, and just I kind of broke it down a little bit more, saying the Olympics are compressing everything because that's a 2-week break, 2.5, I think, essentially, where there are no games being played. Predators are playing at least 3 games a week up until that pause. So from this week until the pause, which happens right after the first week of February, they play at least 3 games a week. And then they have one more back-to-back on February 4th and 5th. They are playing the Wild here on the 3rd. They're playing the Wild here on the 4th, and then they are playing the Capitals on the road on the 5th. So again, that's another quick turnaround as well. And then last week, Predators played 4 games in 7 days. So it's a grind. I mean, they've talked about it all season. I remember the Golden Knights talking about it last year when I was there, in the 4 nations and the schedule being compressed. So they all know it's a grind. It was worse in the beginning of the year, and when the Predators were losing everything that came towards them in October and November. And Nick Hagan had an interesting comment on that, saying, I don't think I've had a real practice since I've gotten here, because he was either dealing with his injury and then coming back in the injury. They were traveling every other day or playing every other day, so they weren't getting a real practice. So that day that we got to talk to him, he's like, this is my first real practice. And again, this was like November, like middle of November. So the schedule's been a grind all year. As O'Reilly said, he reiterated that and said, it is what it is, and we're aware of that, and we're not creating excuses for it. But if you looked in a playoff situation with this game we played against Vegas, he believes it could have been different. And then talked about the hot starts that this team has had this year, or at least lately, in kind of switching things around a little bit more from the Rangers game that happened on December 23rd to that was the Capitals game, which was the last time they did this. It was 10 straight games from the end of December to early January where they had given up the first goal of the game. And then in the Edmonton game, it immediately switched around. So Edmonton, Colorado, Vegas, they have all scored the first goal of the game. And talked a little bit about why that's been happening, what looks so good in allowing them to jump out so early. And he said, we're a little simpler to start. We're kind of just engaging in the game right away, where I think earlier in the year, we weren't a very good first period team. We kind of just tried to feel out what's going to happen, and now we're a bit clearer, more precise, and simpler getting into our game. So basically, they're not overwhelmed as soon as the puck drops, and they're not trying to do too much. They're keeping things simple, and that's leading to goals essentially. And I think a little bit of the amping up, especially in the Edmonton game, helps, where you have McCarron dropping the gloves 3 seconds in, and then less than 3 minutes into the game, Stamkos is scoring to put them up. It's a mix of everything a little bit more. So, but the big thing is they've mentioned is just making the game simpler, and that's allowing them to get out to a clean start, move forward, and eventually take the lead in the game. And then talking about what's coming up against Buffalo, we'll keep that for the next segment, talk about Buffalo thoroughly. But he said in the Predators mindset, he said for us, it's about responding, coming out with that kind of urgency right away, going back to what he said about the good starts, getting the first goal, and just being continuous and consistent. Consistent's been the whole theme of this entire year, and just being continuous and accomplishing what you want to do right off the bat and carrying it throughout the entire game. But before we get into the final segment and talking about the Buffalo game, I want to talk to you guys about the Everydayer Club. So thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Predators with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonpredators.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. When we come back, we will be previewing the Buffalo Sabres. And like I said last episode, this ain't your mama's Buffalo Sabres. This ain't your daddy's Buffalo Sabres. This is a Sabres team that is competing to get into the playoffs. So Tuesday will be the first meeting between the Predators and the Sabres this season. That game is happening on Tuesday, as I said, at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time at Bridgestone Arena. If you want to find good tickets, go to Gametime. They have good ticket deals. Shameless plug there. But Buffalo, similar to Edmonton, it's been a continuous theme here, similar to Edmonton to Nashville, as Nashville was to Vegas, and now Buffalo is to Nashville. They're coming off a back-to-back. The league does really weird stuff lately. I've really noticed this since the ESPN contract takeover, because when they were under NBC, they didn't do all of this stuff. I don't know what a good word for it is, and just scheduling and the times they put the games up. But today, the Sabres played the Hurricanes in a matinee game on it was at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. I guess it is Martin Luther King Day, so I guess kids have off of school, and that's I don't know. I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch when talking about putting a noon game in or an early time game. But I guess if people have a school off or have work off, I guess it does give a little bit more of an excuse. But it's a 2-1 win in favor of the Hurricanes. And then this puts Buffalo on a back-to-back on the road, similar to the situation that the Predators were in. And it's going to be challenging for them, too, being a wild card team, going up against Carolina, who is one of the best teams in the Metropolitan Division, and then going up against a Predators team on the road that is trying to get into the playoffs, too. Going back to the stars we mentioned earlier, Roman Josi, second star in the 3 stars. I don't know why I keep doing that, but first one went to Tage Thompson, who plays for the Buffalo Sabres. He had 3 goals, 6 assists for 9 points in 4 games. Again, if the NHL went Sunday to Sunday, Roman Josi, 10 points, 4 games, more than Tage Thompson. Josi would have been the first star, in my opinion. As a defenseman, not going to get into it. We're going to leave it. But he's been critical this year for Buffalo's success, Tage Thompson. 50 points in 47 games and a nice solid, you guys love to hear this. Everyone loves to hear this. 25 goals and 25 assists. Love a good balanced number for a rounded 50. Serious weapon for Buffalo. Tage Thompson, he's been really heating up for them this year. Been a critical reason as to why they've been as good as they have, and just having this opportunity to get to the playoffs for the first time in 15 years. Alex Tuch has been critical to them as well. 40 points in 46 games, 17 goals, 23 assists. This Buffalo team likes to score too, y'all. 9th most goals per game in the NHL at 3.28. If you want to know where the Predators sitting at, they're 24th at 2.81. So Buffalo likes to shoot the puck. They like to score the puck. Be aware of that. Also, to put into context as well, the the Eastern Conference is a little bit more heightened right now than the West is, in that the bar for who makes the playoffs, it's a little bit higher right now in the East than it is in the West. And what I mean by that is Buffalo is a wild card team in the final wild card spot with 57 points. The last team in the wild card spot in the West is, there's 3 of them right now. It's Los Angeles, I believe. It's one of the California teams. All the California teams have 51 points. That's the threshold in the West. So play is a little bit more heightened out in the East, and by that usually comes with their scoring a little bit more. The puck's going in a little bit more. They're a little bit more offensive, being active out there. So that might equate to why Buffalo has a lot higher goals per game, but they are scoring the puck a little bit more than the Predators are. As I've mentioned, Sabres are in a similar position to the Predators here, which lines up for what could be a very entertaining matchup. Similar, Buffalo is in the final wild card spot. Predators have come up to it. They have not been in that spot since they have made this miraculous turnaround and have put themselves in a position to compete for the playoffs. Buffalo is in that spot right now as of January 19th at 4:40 p.m. The games tonight have not been played yet, but Buffalo has 57 points. Toronto has 56 points, and they play Minnesota tonight. So if the Maple Leafs get a point out of that game, they are tied, which makes this matchup for Buffalo even more critical in wanting to hold on to that playoff spot. At the same time, too, things are so close in the Atlantic Division out east that this win, if they beat the Predators, that could set them up to compete for the 3rd spot in the Atlantic Division, which is currently held by Montreal, and the Sabres are 4 points behind that. If they win, they're 2 points behind that, but that's not putting into context if the Canadians win and everything else that would happen that night. It's just very competitive out in the Atlantic Division right now. There isn't much separation as compared to the Central Division here, where it's the wild card teams and then the top 3 with Minnesota, Dallas, and Colorado. However, who knows what could happen? That gap could shrink a lot. I was talking to Ann Kimmel today and talking about the standings here and being like, I don't think I've seen this really before in all the time I've been watching hockey, and it just being so close for so long. and that wild card race being so tight, and the Central Division being the only one that really has enough separation to where the top 3 teams have separated themselves from everybody else. But I mean, the Pacific's up for grabs, the Atlantic's up for grabs. I haven't really looked at the Metro, but everything's really competitive right now. And Barry Trotz has talked a little bit about it as in why teams don't really want to trade right now, because they just don't know what position they're in. So all these matchups, especially this one where you have 2 teams competing for a wild card spot, are critical in this regard. In talking about the Predators wild card race, because we just talked about the Atlantic one for so long, Preds have 50 points, and then you have Anaheim, Los Angeles, and San Jose, who all have 51 points. Isn't that fun? And then you have Utah, who has 54, and the Preds we'll see on Saturday. Give or take whatever the weather does. I think they'll still play the game. It might be difficult getting down to Bridgestone Arena. I don't know. The snow will be interesting. Talking about who can move up before Tuesday's game, Monday's games, the Sharks are playing the Panthers in Sunrise in Florida, and then the Ducks are playing the Rangers in California out at the Honda Center in Anaheim. If things make sense on paper, the Sharks will likely lose because Florida is one of the better teams in the league, and the Ducks will probably win as the Rangers, as we've seen them, everything that's going on with that team right now. They are one of the worst teams in the NHL and in full-on crisis, and talking about how they're not going to re-sign Artemi Panarin and telling that to his face in the middle of the season and apologizing to fans. And it's a mess out there. Anaheim's not in great shape as well, but it seems like they have a little bit more stability than the Rangers have going on right now. But Predators play the Sabres, 7 p.m., Bridgestone Arena. Guys are there, come say hello. Section 311 is where the media seating is. So if you'd like to come out at the intermission, chat, talk, give me ideas or whatever, just want to say hi and give me a wave, please do. Love meeting y'all, love talking to y'all constantly. There's also other media members there if you would like to chat with them as well. But that will do it for today's episode. Thank you guys for joining me. Always appreciative of you guys and talking to you guys. My Twitter is at Jack G. Williams. All my work is on the Hockey News /Nashville Predators. That conversation I had with Ryan O'Reilly is a story. So if you guys want to see a little bit more detail into that, see it out in the black and white print, go to Hockey News Nashville Predators and you could go and check it out. Also have some other works in regards to the Olympics coming up, so that'd be fun to do. But if you guys are just interested in Locked On Predators, on Twitter we are at LO_Predators, and on Facebook and Instagram we're just Locked On Predators. And again, if you guys are interested, really invested in the Locked On Predators, like really locked on and Locked On Predators, join the Everyday Club. If you never miss an episode, it's time to make it official. Join Locked On Everyday Club and get ad-free audio, access to our members-only Discord, and more, all built in for our most loyal fans. But thank you guys once again. Appreciative. We'll be back to debrief the Buffalo game. But until then, thank you for joining me for another episode of Locked On Predators, and I will see you guys tomorrow.